The Guide to Goals podcast gives you the tools, direction, and resources you need to pursue your passion project. I'm Deborah Eckerling, Project Catalyst, and this is the Guide to Goals podcast. I'm very excited. Our guest today is Ryan Williams, and we're going to talk about the influencer economy. Ryan is a writer, entrepreneur, and marketer, and founder of the Influencer Economy podcast and upcoming book. Ryan, welcome. Happy to have you here.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Why don't you tell our people a little bit more about you and what it is you do?
I'm a former stand-up comedian, and I have since retired, so I've dropped the mic, but I then went in and changed my career into being a startup team member for many startups based in Los Angeles and one in London. And when I was at Machinima, which is a big gaming content network on YouTube, I noticed a phenomenon of YouTube creators becoming a new sensation, building businesses and companies. So I've focused my business, my podcast, and my book around what I call the influencer economy, which are maker-creator entrepreneurs launching big media companies through their own content.
Okay, so you are the perfect person to talk to for people who are launching passion projects, or they want to, or they're like, oh my God, what do I do? So what is it? Why is it so important for people to be creating content these days to achieve their influencer status?
The first advice I give people is if you're going to create content, whether it's a blog or a podcast, YouTube channel, whatever you pick for a medium, is you need to be consistent and do it every week. And also, more importantly, build it into your routine for the business. And oftentimes people that pursue side projects that they're passionate about, they do it as a hobby, and then they lose motivation, family gets in the way, and oftentimes their full-time job. So I think you need to prioritize it and mentally bake it in to your business, that this is imperative, it's part of the bottom line, to make sure that you keep doing it, because it's the long game. And for any sort of content platform you build for yourself, it's years, it's a grind.
Yes, but most, or at least I like to think, the people who are doing it, especially the stuff on the side that takes time off from, their life, I guess, the stuff they're being paid for while they're doing the things that they love, that they want to eventually be paid for. You have to love it, right? Or you have to want to commit to it, or else what's the point, right?
Right, and it's like attrition. The people that end up surviving at the end and don't give up because they love it,
Mm-hmm.
and they need to do it, are ultimately, there's a great percentage of those people that succeed in the end. Like Grace Helbig is a YouTuber that I'm profiling in my book, and she was on the Today Show, and they asked her what her viral moment was. And Kathleen and Hoda were fascinated by the viral moment, and I laughed because there's no viral moment. It's years and years of doing something you love and making it pay off.
Okay, so what's the first step? Someone who wants to start building their status and getting known, what do they do first?
I think depending on what the medium is, like the most important thing is starting and telling people about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people, they think, like it's a romanticized to think that you can just be home in your office in a silo making something that's going to touch the world. So you need to get an email list. I always recommend picking friends and former colleagues and people that you trust, and you need to send them an email and say, I am doing this. I would love it if you could give me feedback on it, because I want to make it the best in the world.
Okay, and then they get their feedback and then just go for it, move forward, onward?
I feel like a lot of times people get stuck in being perfectionists, and they want to launch with everything right. And they think that it has to be 100% perfect, because that's what we are in the end, especially stuff that we love. And obsessing about the details oftentimes gets you lost in the details. So I recommend creating a logo, just simple stuff. And this is not only for you, but it's for the world to know that this exists. So when you go to a party or a coffee and you have your iPhone, you can say, hey, this is a logo I'm thinking about making. I made A and B logos. What do you think? And I believe getting a website up is imperative, even if it's just the logo and your mission statement. Putting an email button at the top that says, hey, please sign up for updates. Emails are the most important things that you need to acquire to help build out your idea. and the basic steps like that.
Okay, so what you're saying is stake your claim. Get
Yeah.
your website, get your logo, figure out what your content is going to be, whether it's a blog or a podcast or a web series or whatever it is, or actually in the case of this one, it's, YouTube videos and podcast and the blog post. So when you can package it all together, that's usually good, right?
Of course.
You're getting.
You have to
Why
be
is
like,
that good?
well, you have to have a mission, and the mission is what your thesis for the world is. Like, I'm proving X through Y, which is all my content and storytelling and collaborations. And then once you get to the point where this thing exists, then people will judge you by your portfolio of work. And the beauty of where we are, it's all on demand. So nothing has to be in real time. So making your content evergreen, and obviously trends shift over time, but you want to make it so it's accessible to anyone. And if you don't have an on-demand channel at this stage in the game and you work in marketing or you're an entrepreneur, then you're way behind the curve.
And one of the things that really intrigues me is now podcasting has been around for a while, but it's just in the last maybe year or two that it has just exploded. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's the Serial Effect, which is
Mm-hmm.
the popular podcast with Sarah Koenig that I loved. I think that really changed the game for companies making podcasts, and that media brands realized they had to be in people's earbuds telling stories. But before that, I believe that it was mostly people that were creative and they were looking for another extension of themselves. And audio is cheaper to produce than video. It's also something that you can do that you don't have to actually be face to face with someone. So you can do it remotely more easily. And I think the tools are so much more accessible now. And we all now have iTunes for the podcast app is native on the iPhone. And that only happened in the last 9 months. And more importantly, I think for the general trends of podcasting is internet connected cars are going to be the future. And so as we get more enabled with technology, we'll have on-demand podcast versus radio in the future. I think it's only going to accelerate the growth of podcasting.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, not that many years ago, but I had a Blog Talk Radio for Right On Online, which is my other site. And it was fine, but I just got so excited about the future and producing on demand, which is what caused me to make that transition. That plus, prodding from people I know, like, oh, the person I'm speaking to right now.
Right.
Okay, so what else? What other mistakes do people make other than, starting something and then dropping it? Because I'm sure there's more than that.
I mean, the perfectionist one is so much. I mean, the perfection of launching your thing, because it's your baby, and you work so hard on this project. You don't want to have any imperfections, but we're all day to day. All of our projects are day to day. The beauty of the internet is there's a quick memory for people. So if you fail, you move along and you say nothing happened here. I made a mistake. I owned it. You tell people that you screwed up, and then you move on. And so the perfectionist thing is a really big thing that I see as a trend that people get in the way of themselves because they want to execute it so awesomely, which is a problem, but also it makes you step up your game. Another trend I see is that people, they also just let life get in the way. And it's so easy. You have a kid, you have a day job, and you have all these other, like you have your garden. I mean, whatever. These are first world problems with gardening.
Right.
But we all get wrapped up, and so they don't prioritize this, that they don't think there's a direct ROI, and they don't take it as seriously as they should. So they deprioritize it, and then other people that are honing their craft, building out their mini empires of content are getting ahead of them.
And so what is something else? So I'm an influencer. We, the people who are listening. They pick one piece of content. I'm going to develop my blog in whatever format, etc. What other things can they do to get out in the world as an influencer?
So yeah, everyone listening is an influencer. You're right.
Right.
I agree with you. You have a very tasteful audience, and the two things I recommend are going to industry specific conferences and talking to people and putting yourself out there, and if possible, getting booked on a panel. Because when you go to a conference and you're an attendee, you can reach people. They're completely accessible, but you have to go up to people, right, that you don't know. Whereas if you are on a panel, you suddenly become the mainstay of the attraction, and people will come to you. So you don't have to work as hard to network, and you get that built-in credibility factor. And then the second thing is going to like larger trade shows. People often overvalue that. And I think if you go to a trade show like CES, Comic Con, for example, I don't know, like what trade shows do you go to?
Well, I go to, well, Social Media Marketing World because I'm an editor for Social Media Examiner.
Yeah.
And it's not a conference, but I do have a monthly hangout for writers and entrepreneurs, which is a combination of my Write On Online and Guided Goals communities. Since I wouldn't even call it a pivot, but my community used to be writer-centric. Now it's more entrepreneur with content and project focus. So,
Okay.
more like
Yeah.
not even a full pivot, more like a turn of the head. But
Yeah.
but this I host in LA, and it's just a way for mostly people who are working on their own, to like get out and talk to other people. And we do start with the whole, what are you working on? What are your goals? What are you going to accomplish next time? And what do you need? How can you help other people? So that, why are you asking me questions?
Because because I was curious about, just because general conferences, like I was making the point that you do these events and you actually create an opportunity in the community and the piping for people to connect and share and connect with like-minded people. And oftentimes when you go to a monster conference like CES, people lose their focus and they don't have a clear agenda. And if you go to these events, you should only go if you have anchor events, which are lunches, dinners, drinks. You have to have a clear agenda. And so I think people misunderstand how to fully optimize something like Comic-Con, and even social media events themselves can become just beasts. And so you need to figure out like how to prioritize. So if you can figure, like, I had this lunch planned that has these 10 people that are going to be there, or I have a drink with this person who I need to connect with for my business, then it's worth it. But I think a lot of people overvalue the big trade shows, and it sounds like you don't go to many of them. So
Well, I live in LA, so there's an event. Well, no, there are several events every single day in
yeah,
Los Angeles, except for maybe on the weekend it's a little bit more social. But we live in a city that's got a ton of things, and it doesn't matter what you're into. And anybody who lives anywhere, check your library, check your bookstore, check meetup.com, you will find something. And if you can't find something, then create something.
exactly.
And this is what I'm doing now is an extension of a group I created when I lived in Chicago in the 90s. So certainly something I've been doing for a while. The one thing I wanted to add to what you said about attending conferences, if you're not a speaker and you're just getting started, volunteer. That's
Yeah.
the second best way to get
Right.
everybody to talk to you.
Oh, yeah. And you get to have exclusive time with people that are speaking or, planning the event. Totally. Yeah. And we live in LA together. We're neighbors.
We are neighbors, and it doesn't matter what kind of town you're in, you can find or create opportunities.
Or you're within driving distance from somewhere that's a bigger place.
That's true. And so the other thing I want to address real quick, because you mentioned it briefly, but work-life balance is so important, especially when you're working full-time and you've got a side project and you've got a life, family, relationships,
Give up
whatever.
that.
What?
Give up your life.
Oh, come
You have to give up your
on.
life. It's not.
So how do you achieve work-life balance?
If you have a significant other, you most likely are with that person because they get you, and so they usually are your biggest advocate, and they understand that this is part of what makes you tick. So hopefully, if that's the case, then you know how to carve out and prioritize your time, and you have to articulate the ROI to your partner that says, "Hey, I'm going to this event." Like I went to a event last week at the YouTube Space in Los Angeles, and I said I'm only going for 45 minutes. I know I'm missing bedtime, which I miss with my daughter. I'm bummed about that, but I'm going for a focus. I'm going to talk to this one person, and I'm going to come home. And so I think you have to be honest with people. But I think, unfortunately, for some people, your friends may change a bit because oftentimes your friends become more people that live in your universe where your business and overlap with friends is stronger than before.
Yeah, networking in events is pretty much my social life, but but they're the people I enjoy. So you make a really good point. You need to carve out the time and be with people you want, and also to understand that the people who get you may change. I think that's huge.
And your friends, may change. Your friends from college, for example, my friends from college think I speak a foreign language. They all have very traditional jobs, and the only thing they can really wrap their brain around is like how much money I make. And you may not value, that kind of a relationship anymore. So unfortunately, like the people that work in finance that are my friends, I have less in common with now, and I don't think it's necessarily great to hang out with them. And so you got to find, unfortunately, sometimes your friend group transitions because you have to be around people that are positive and supportive, that understand you're putting yourself out there taking a risk, and there's no defined ROI or you may fail, right? You may create something that doesn't work, but you have to be around supportive people that are going to back you on that.
And as you mentioned before, if it fails, there's the next thing, right?
It's the internet. We forget so quickly. Like one thing at Machinima, we would make mistakes with YouTube videos, and you apologize, you own it, you move on, and the next week everyone forgets and they love you again. And it seems like the internet, especially, there's such an extreme: we love you or we hate you. So it's slow and steady, really, that wins the race in the end because it's a long game.
Okay, so I want to give our listeners some homework. So
Okay.
what do you think is something an influencer or would-be influencer can do right now, like when they're done listening, to move forward?
I think that's a question. What kind of listeners are we talking about? Like with the project?
Yeah, I would say in my mind, my listener is the one who either is working a day job and has a passion project on the side or wants to start one, or is an entrepreneur who has the book they want to write as their side project within their passion project.
I would pick a launch date for a major or minor milestone that you've been putting off, saying, "Oh, I don't know when I'm going to launch this product." It could be a book, it could be a new build for your technology, it could be your podcast. Pick a launch date and work backwards and create a 30-day plan or whatever, 45-day plan. But I would say that like it's so hard to pick an end date and realize if it changes, that's okay. But when things become tangible and pressure and deadlines hit, that we often kick ourselves into adrenaline mode, and it forces us to actually build out what we envision rather than letting it go. So that would be my homework.
Oh, no, that's great homework. I'm going to add a second homework. So as soon as you're done listening, pick something and pick a launch day for it. And then also find an event to go to.
Oh, yeah.
And go to with purpose. So we've got a personal and a professional goal in there in mind. Thank you so much, Ryan Williams, the Influencer Economy, speaking with us today. And any final thoughts?
Go to that event with purpose. And often don't treat events like they're strictly social events. Because sometimes I think people get a little caught up, like, oh, yeah, and they let their guard down too much. I think realizing that you're in control and that you're focused will work a lot better than if you just treat it like, hey, this is like people go to these events with purpose professionally, not just personally.
And keep your business cards, keep your professional hat on, and realize that the internet people might forget, but you only have one chance to make a first impression.
And go to people that you don't know and say hi. Worst things that happen is they just ignore you. But that's not rejection. That just means you talk to them again in a week or a month or a year.
It's very funny. I always feel like I need to apologize to my friends when I go to events because I'll see them, I'll give them a hug. Hi, how are you doing? I have to go meet people I don't know now. I will talk to you later.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing personal.
And the ones who get you get that too, and that's important for everyone.
100%.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Ryan, and thanks everyone for listening. And you've got your initiative, so go on and go for it. This is Deborah Eckerling with the Guide to Goals podcast. Thank you for joining us.